I'm going to start this, or else I'll probably just get one done today anyway. All right, Serenity, good to see you. This is called the tea ceremony. This is a neat story because it tells you how your family traditions can be based in history and teach you a lot about your culture. And I think that's true about a lot of family traditions. You know, about maybe how you celebrate Christmas, how you celebrate Thanksgiving. It can teach you a lot about your family history. This, of course, this family history goes back a long way. It's about, in the East Asian culture, drinking tea and what it means. All right, let me read the story and we'll do the questions. Most of Julie's friends' parents drank coffee. Some of them liked tea too, but not like her parents did. Jill's family, Billy's family, and Tanya's family each had just 2 or 3 boxes of tea on a shelf, but Julie had a whole cabinet dedicated to tea. No bags and boxes either. Her parents drank loose tea, leaf tea, the real stuff, her dad called it. Loose leaf tea is what the correct term for that is. Packed tightly, rich red and gold tins, the Tang collection included fragrant jasmine green tea, long jing tea, a pan-fried tea, green tea Julie preferred to call by its nickname, dragonwell tea, roasted curly leaf oolong tea, and lightly sweet white tea, and more. Every New Year, the Chinese New Year that is, her parents would have a traditional tea ceremony. That's the time when she would roll her eyes and slink out of the room. Her mom said it was an important cultural tradition, but Julie just thought it was B-O-R-I-I-I-N-G, boring, or at least she assumed it would be if she ever stuck around for it. However, now that she was 13, an official teenager at last, Julie felt different, more mature, and she was beginning to really enjoy history, thanks to her great social studies teacher. Julie decided it was time this new year to take an interest in her own family and cultural history once she realized she actually knew very little. She'd only been to China once when she visited her grandparents as a 5-year-old, and her classes devoted equal time studies of all the cultures of the world, not just that of the Chinese. Why do we have to do this tea ceremony every year? Julie asked her mother, who was taking the clay teapots out of the cabinet reserved for special teapots and fancy dishes. I'm not in the mood for complaints, her mother warned. No, but I really want to know, what is the tea ceremony really all about? And why do you always say that drinking tea is part of your DNA? Julie's mother gave her a sideways glance, her mouth turning from a suspicious smirk into a gleeful smile as she realized Julie genuinely wanted to learn about China's tea-steeped history. Well, the DNA thing is a figure of speech. I know that, Mom, Julie sighed. How old do you think I am, 10? Okay, then, legend has it that Shennong, a Chinese emperor and herbalist, someone who grows and sells herbs and uses them to treat illness, discovered tea way back in 2737 BC. That's a long time ago. He liked his water boiled so it would be germ-free when he drank it. One day, as a servant prepared the emperor's water, a dead leaf dropped into the water. The emperor drank it and actually found it to be quite tasty. Another story says that Shennong, whose name translates to divine farmer, and is known by many as the father of agriculture and herbal medicine, would test out many different herbs each day. Whenever he came across a poisonous one, he would use tea as an antidote. Chinese people teach tea and use it as medicine throughout history. And by the early Middle Ages, drinking tea was common practice in China. It was considered one of the 7 necessities to begin the day alongside firewood, rice, oil, salt, sauce, and vinegar. Sort of got all the flavor categories. Julie's mother walked across the room to the bookshelf and pulled out a yellow and red book titled The Classic of Tea, Origin and Rituals, written by Lu Yu. This book, which was written about 760 AD during the Tang Dynasty, is all about how tea is grown and how the leaves are processed and things like that. I advise you to read this instead of wasting your time with all that TV. I watch nothing but TTV, Julie joked. Right. Well, in case they didn't cover this on TTV, in the book you describes the tea trees that grow in South China. Back in those days, they would compress tea leaves into little cakes, not like a birthday cake, just a little brick of leaves, which they would grind in a stone mortar. Excuse me. They'd add hot water to the tea powder to make the beverage we know as tea. The Chinese call cha. Julie responded to her mother's lifted eyebrows. Cha was one of a few Chinese words Julie had memorized. As tea became popular, so did tea shops. They continued to prosper during the Song dynasty, and China's tea culture started to spread a little bit to other lands as monks and Zen masters brought tea seeds, drinkware, and knowledge to Japan. Nowadays, we have a lot of coffee shops, but we also have places that just sell tea. However, Chinese rulers imposed a strict ban on tea experts during the Song, Yuan, and Ming dynasty. The ban made it difficult, for tea to grow popular around the world. Then, soon after the Qing dynasty, I'm not sure that's pronounced correctly, was established in the 17th century, the ban was officially lifted, and merchants traveled first by land to export tea. Many went as far as Russia, almost 4,000 miles by horse, oxen, mules, and yaks. Just imagine. Whoa, Julie thought about how hard it had been for her to run a mile in gym class. Mule or no mule, 4,000 miles by anything but airplane was impossible for her to imagine. Oh, excuse me. Anyway, enough about trade for now. Back in the Song dynasty, the Chinese would take that ground tea powder and whip it so it was frothy, almost like the top of a milkshake. They had special tea bowls to accommodate the whipping, many of which were black or blue and looked beautiful against the light green tea. During the Ming dynasty, people started to transform green tea into black tea by heating the leaves. They realized they could preserve the leaves for a longer time by doing so. That's when oolong came into the picture. They also began seeping whole tea leaves instead of powder, which is the loose leaf style you're used to. And what about the ceremonies? Julie was interested, but knew that if she didn't wrap things up soon, her mother would talk straight till morning. Well, a Chinese tea ceremony is a way for families to connect, which is why it's a wedding tradition. It's also about cultivating peace, quiet, enjoyment, and strength. When you're performing a ceremony, there are 6 things to keep in mind: attitude, tea selection, water selection, teaware selection, ambience. Ambience is the atmosphere, and technique. Let's start with attitude. Julie smiled. Perfect. Now, let me show you the rest. So, in showing an interest about tea, which was part of her tradition, she learned a lot more about the history of her people and about why it was a ceremony. Ceremonies sort of encapsulate what they do and make them stronger by repeating them and people bringing meaning to the tradition and to the ceremony. Okay, very good. Let's do the questions. All about tea. All right. How are Julie's parents different from her friend's parents? Now, there probably are a number of ways, but we only have 4 choices. So remember, even though you have something in mind, always answer the question based on the choice that's given you, and the choice, of course, reflects what's in the passage. Julie's parents celebrate Halloween, and her friend's parents do not. We don't know anything about that. That would just be an inference beyond what's on the page, and you don't want to do that. B, Julie's parents like tea much more than her friend's parents do. It's a possibility. C, Julie's parents have different jobs than her friend's parents do. Possibility too. Julie's parents prefer books while her friend's parents prefer TV. Can't say that. So the choice, of course, is B. Julie's parents like tea much more than her friend's parents do. Excuse me. Let's do number 2. What does Julie's mom to Julie about throughout the story? A. Julie's mom teaches her about how tea is used in different cultures around the world. Nope, not different cultures, just her own. B. Julie's mom teaches her how trade has changed in China. Nope, just learn about tea, not all trade. C. Julie's mom teaches her about the story of tea and tea ceremonies. That's the answer, but let's look at 4. Always look at all your choices. D. Julie's mom teaches her about the different dynasties in Chinese history. Now, she does learn about the different dynasties, but mostly she learns about the history of tea and tea ceremonies in relation to those dynasties, because those dynasties reflect the history of China. All right. Tea is very significant to Chinese culture. What evidence from the text supports this conclusion? Back in the Song dynasty, the Chinese would take the ground tea powder and whip it so it was frothy, almost like the top of a milkshake. B. However, Chinese rulers imposed a strict ban on tea exports during the Song, Yong, and Ming dynasty. C. Shenong liked the tea boiled so it would be germ-free when he drank it. One day, as a servant prepared the emperor's water, a dead tea leaf dropped into the water. The emperor drank it and actually found it to be quite tasty. Let's look at D. Well, Chinese tea ceremony is a way for families to connect, which is why it's a wedding tradition. It's also about cultivating peace, quiet, enjoyment, and strength. So we got to go with D. When it talks about peace, quiet, enjoyment, and strength, and it's a family connective, and it's a wedding tradition, you can't get much more elevated than that. That's a high number and quality of reasons to study tea and to drink tea and have ceremonies. Number 4, how does Julie's mother feel about Julie's sudden interest in tea ceremonies? She's indifferent, which means she doesn't care. She is happy. She is frustrated. She's concerned. Well, Julie's mother is happy because Julie's going to learn about the ceremony, the tradition, and her family, and about the history of the Chinese people. Okay, let's look at number 5. What is the main idea of this passage? Is the main idea that Julie's parents are not like her friend's parents? I mean, that's in there, but is that the main idea? I don't think so. Julie learns about the history, tea, and Chinese tea ceremonies from her mother. This sounds pretty good. Let's check C. Julie's mother explains how the Ming Dynasty created oolong tea. That might be a fact, but it's not the main idea. Julie has found tea ceremonies to be very boring until now. Another fact, but not the main idea. So the main idea is B. Julie learns about the history, tea, and Chinese tea ceremonies from her mother, and the book too that her mother brings out. Okay, read these sentences from the text. Every New Year, her parents would have a traditional tea ceremony. That's the time when she would roll her eyes and slink out of the room. Her mother said it was an important cultural tradition, but Julie just thought it was boring, boring. Why does they spell that out? To emphasize how tired Julie gets during tea ceremonies? No. To emphasize how much Julie disliked the tea ceremony. That sounds pretty good. B sounds good. C, to show how quiet Julie had to be while slinking out of the room. Or D, help readers understand how to spell boring. Definitely not the last one, not the second to the last, not the first. It's got to be B, to emphasize how much Julie disliked the idea of a tea ceremony. She found nothing in it she liked. She thought it was boring to the extent where she spelled it out. All right, let's try number 7 here. Julie's mother's told her a lot about the history of tea. And then we got to fill in the blank to keep the sentence mean the same. So let's go with D here, including how different kinds of tea ceremonies were included. That's what keeps the meaning of the sentence intact in relationship to the passage. What does his mother give her to help Julie learn more about tea? Well, remember, he gives her this book, and the book is very much details out the history of the tea ceremony. What about number 9? Julie's mother explains that tea ceremonies help families connect. What else are they for? Well, they help families connect. They're a tradition for the culture, and they're also for weddings. There must be a tea ceremony for the weddings. All right, let's try number 10 here. Explain why Julie probably appreciates tea and tea ceremonies more after a conversation with her mother. Well, one thing is she respects her mother, and she respects her mother's affection too with the tea ceremony. Her mother loves the tea ceremony. It's part of the culture. It's part of the strength of their history. It's part of what the family does out of regard for tradition. Okay, we got time just to start maybe another passage. Probably won't finish it. This is an interesting little story. This little story, the moral is sometimes you feel a certain way about yourself, but it's not always true. Sometimes you underestimate yourself.